And sometimes you get to what you think is the greener pasture, and you go, oh,
It's not that green.
it's not quite what I thought I was signing up for.
Right.
And so wrestling with, is it time to look for something else, or is this just a tough season? I need to see it through. Welcome back to A Higher Purpose, a Vanderbloemen podcast. I'm your host, Brett Connolly, and joining me, as
Again.
always, we're so back. We're so back. We haven't been canceled yet.
We are so back.
This is Sarah Gonzalez.
Hey, guys.
My coworker, my co-host, sometimes my friend.
Sometimes. On a good day.
No, this is good. I'm so excited just to spend some time to talk about ourselves.
Yeah, we're being really selfish today.
Yeah, really, we're just stealing
Stealing
the
the show.
cameras. But no, I think this is important because the first episode was really setting the tone of like, what is the heart behind this podcast?
Yeah.
Hearing from William was so valuable.
Yeah.
And we want to take some of those nuggets from what William had said and begin kind of walking through some of those lanes of, man, we don't want to waste this life. We're only given one.
Yeah.
We want to live for a higher purpose.
Yeah.
And so I thought it'd be fun just to kind of start 3-4 minute snapshot. Tell us
Who
about
we are.
yourself.
What we do.
Yeah. Who
what
are you,
fills our
Sarah?
days. Well, I work at Vanderbloemen, and I am the executive assistant at Vanderbloemen. And that fills a lot of my days. But I also am a worship leader for my church. And I am a wife and a daughter and a friend and a lot of other titles that I love to get to wear.
And a recruiter, right? You do some recruiting?
I do some recruiting. I dabble in the recruiting. Yes. And I love that. That's super fun to get to talk to people, figure out their calling, where they're going. And so I'm so excited to host this podcast because I've gotten to be a part of a lot of those conversations. And I know I went through a lot of soul searching and navigating as I was looking for careers. And if you would have told me 4 years ago, honestly, 2 years ago, that I would be an executive assistant, I would have said, absolutely not. That's not what I got my degree in. That's not what I think I'm going to do with my life. I wasn't very open to all the opportunities. And so it's very exciting to sit in this chair and kind of reflect on it. How did I get here? Why am I here? And kind of my purpose throughout my hours of the week. What about you, Brett?
Yeah, well, before I talk about myself, I'll just say we were having a kind of a prep meeting. And I'm not going to lie, I didn't know what Sarah's title was. And I was like, Sarah, what is your official title? And she goes, what do you think my title is? And I was like, gatekeeper? Because she really has the keys to everything. She knows where everyone is, what they're doing. And I would say you're the glue. So it's really important what you do.
That's kind. Thanks, Brett.
I guess now I'm supposed to talk about myself?
You could. You don't have to. You
Okay,
can skip
that's
it.
fine. Well, I would say that I'm on the older side of the demographic we're shooting for on this podcast. You're right into it, which is great. So I get to be the grandpa of the pod. I've been at Vanderbloemen for a little over 5 years, which I absolutely love. It was so funny because I was looking at ministry positions on Vanderbloemen.
Classic.
I believe that was at the end of 2018. And I was like, I feel like my current position's kind of sunsetting. I wasn't running from something, but you just kind of feel that stirring.
Yeah, that
you
nudge.
know, I had been at that church for about 6 years and really loved it. But it was like, man, I couldn't shake there's something on the horizon. And it wasn't there. And so started looking externally. I hadn't even updated my resume yet, which is a big pitfall. You should be keeping that resume updated. I was like, I am 6 years behind on this bad boy. I need to update this. But I go to vanderbloemen.com, and I was looking at the job tab, and I was scrolling through, and there's so many helpful tabs, and nothing was stirring my soul. Nothing was stirring my wife's soul for a particular position. But then we saw an opening at Vanderbloemen, and we were in the North Houston area, and I was like, this seems so not what I was expecting.
Yeah.
But I majored in communications, minored in Christian studies, dabbled in seminary, all of those things where I just go, this is kind of the perfect blend.
Right.
I think, like, externally, you know, you have
Right.
the concept to the reality. And I was like, maybe I'll dust off my resume and see what happens. This is the only place I ever put my resume out for.
Oh, wow.
The only place. I was
Wow.
like, if it does, great. If it doesn't, I'll keep doing what I'm doing, and I'm going to do it to
Yeah.
the best of my ability.
Yeah.
And then I get the email, hey, fill out a candidate profile. Deal. I'll do that. Hey, record this Spark Hire video. That's something we used to do. Whereas it was terrifying, honestly. It was like, here's 3 or 4 questions. You have 2 minutes for each question, and you only have 3 takes.
Oh.
So one of them, I got to the
Pressure's
last
on.
take, and I was like, don't screw this up. Because I'm a bit of a perfectionist, and I could tell, I was like, man, I slipped up on that word. All right, take 2. And then I got to the last one. I was like, I have no more takes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so somehow that got through, and they're like, we should talk to this guy. And
Shocking.
I know. I am so blessed. Thank you for the favor shown. But yeah, things just kind of escalated from there, and was offered the position and didn't think twice. I said, let's do it. And it's been right before COVID, in COVID, through COVID. And it's just been a real journey.
Yeah.
I'm passionate about next gen ministry. That's kind of my space that I was
Yeah.
in the 2 churches that I worked at before that.
I love it.
And just love getting to interact with young candidates, whether they're working within church ministry or ministry within a nonprofit or ministry that is like their career,
Right.
but they have a platform to be the hands and feet of Christ.
Yeah.
You know, I have a ton of students that'll still come back to me and go, yeah, I'm in this position, but here's what I'm faced with. How can I be Jesus to my coworkers?
Right.
They don't have pastor in their title, you know, but they know that they're on the mission field and they're faced with things. And so I think this is a really unique podcast for people who are maybe finishing up college and they're looking for that first full-time position, and they're trying to figure out, what language do I use to highlight myself? How can I be the unicorn, you know, just to William's book. And then we also have people that are maybe in their first full-time position, and they're trying to figure out, hey, my family's growing.
Yeah.
Finances look a little bit different.
Yeah.
It's no longer just me feeding myself. I mean, you can only go to Raising Cane's so many times.
Only so many times.
And that kid's meal is pretty expensive.
It's getting up there nowadays.
It's like $7 for a kid's meal.
It's ridiculous.
But it's like you have to start thinking a little bit more critically
Right.
About what that next step is. And
Right. It's not that green.
it's not quite what I thought I was signing up for.
Right.
And so wrestling with, is it time to look for something else, or is this just a tough season? I need to see it through.
Yeah.
I think, unfortunately, a lot of kind of this next generation jumps around so quickly.
Yeah.
And it's like, you're going to face difficult conversations and people that you kind of rub, you know, and you go, we don't necessarily agree with certain things, but finding commonality.
Yeah.
And so it's trying to figure out, do we see it through, or is it time to look for something else?
Right. What's that tension?
Yeah. Yeah.
You mentioned updating your resume, and I just kind of want to share why it's so important to keep your resume updated, important to keep your LinkedIn updated. How I got here was so random and the Lord, but my husband and I were living in Abilene, Texas, and we felt like we were supposed to move, and we, sought the Lord and felt like we had heard July, and so we were like, okay, we're gonna move in July. And it was March. And so at the time, we're like, we'll find jobs by July. We've got so much time, so much time. And we searched and searched and searched and searched and searched, and we did not find anything. And we moved unemployed. And a lot of people were like, y'all are crazy. And at the time, I felt so much peace about it that I didn't feel crazy. Looking back, I'm like, oh my gosh, we were crazy. Got here, I was unemployed for a while. And then I ended up getting a job that was doing some admin work for an insurance kind of deal.
Dream job.
And I honestly took it out of fear. I really did. I took it out of, Lord, I don't know why you called us here, but we're not making any money and we do need to live a little bit. And so I took it out of fear. And when I was in it, I got trained and I was in it for 3 weeks. And on my birthday, he called and let me go. not because of me necessarily, but because the company just wasn't making enough money. And so they just didn't have the budget for it. And I remember crying out to the Lord and being like, okay, why did you bring me to Houston? Why am I here? Why did I get trained for that job? This is so stupid. And the week before, I had updated my LinkedIn, and I don't know why, but I had updated my LinkedIn. And so that is how Vanderbloemen found me, was they looked for office managers in Houston. And if I had not put it on my LinkedIn, the 1 week that it was on there, they would not have found me for this position.
Wow.
And so a really cool story of the Lord opening and closing doors, and how I would not have ever seen that plan. And I was trying to convince myself so much when I took that other job, like, this will be good, this will be great, I'll find an opportunity. But I knew in my heart, I knew in my spirit that that's not where the Lord was leading me. But out of that fear of what if I don't find, what if I don't? And it was truthfully not just trusting the Lord with that. And so once I finally, got to kind of the bottom of it, of, okay, now I have no job again, Lord, what do you have for me? He opened this door so evidently. And I knew the second I came in here that this is where I was supposed to be. And so I'm excited about having those conversations of, how do you trust the Lord? How do you also partner with the Lord? Because updating your resume is one thing, but you can't just update your resume and then sit on your couch for months and pray that the Lord hands you a job.
Right.
You got to go out, you got to do things, you need to continue to work on you and your skills. And I got to do a lot of that. And that job for 3 weeks grew me and helped me learn things even before I got here. And my jobs prior to moving helped me a lot with my job here. And I'm already learning things now that I'm like, I know the Lord's going to use that. I know that the Lord's going to use that over and over again. And so, yeah.
I was so close to podcasting with someone else. I'm so glad you updated your LinkedIn.
You were so close to podcasting with someone else.
Oh, my goodness.
It was almost not me.
And she's also one of 3 Sarahs at the Vanderbloemen office.
It's true.
Which gets very confusing.
It's super confusing.
But, no, that's really interesting. And you were discussing off camera, off mic. What was it? It was a great story, but it was setting up. Yeah.
Biggest mistakes that we've made in an interview.
Oof. Okay.
Biggest mistakes we've made in an interview. I really hope I will send this podcast to my former boss who ended up hiring me. I was interviewing for a job, and at the time I was working 3 part-time jobs, and one of them I was a barista. Okay. The dress wear as a barista is very casual, not interview friendly, right? But I get a lot of coffee on me. And so I was like, okay, I will pack my clothes for my interview, go to my shift. When I finish, I'll change, right? I did, in fact, not bring my change of clothes with me. So when I got off my shift at the coffee shop, I decided I can be late to my interview, or I can be wearing ripped jeans to my interview. And I chose the ripped jeans. I thought that the late would way more hinder me. Looking back, maybe would have flopped it. Maybe would have switched it up. I wore ripped jeans. And then I thought too, because I didn't know any better, I thought, I'm going to just stay confident. I'm going to pretend like I really meant to wear these jeans.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say a word. Mistake number 2, I should have owned up to it. I should have explained it and said, hey, this is why. But I didn't. So I found out later the only reason that they hired me is I had a friend who was on the hiring committee. And when I left the room, they all look at him because he had stuck his neck out for me. And they were like, she was great, but why was she in ripped jeans?
Yeah, what was that about?
So he had to once again stick his neck out for me and be like, listen, she's a great person. I'm sure there's a story. He came up to me at church on Sunday and he was like, seriously? And I was like, what? And he was like, the ripped jeans, Sarah. It's like, I know. I'm so sorry. So
and then you got hired at Vanderbloemen. That was the Vanderbloemen interview.
Yeah, that was my interview with William. No, that was somewhere else. And I've learned a lot. I wore very nice slacks and a blazer and high heels to this interview. I was not playing games.
Very professional.
Not playing games. So what about you? You have an interview mistake?
I really don't, but I guess a lesson for like.
You're just perfect. Is that?
Moral of the story: lean in. Everyone lean in. No. I don't know. One of my Vander Index things is prepared. And so
you would not have left your bag at home.
No. No, that actually like stresses me out quite a bit. I remember my first phone call for the Vanderbloemen position. I had gone to all of the Vandervalues and I wrote them down.
Oh,
and I made sure to like reference 2 or 3 of them, like the buzzwords, in my responses.
Prepared.
Yeah.
To a T.
No, it's funny. I went to Dallas Baptist University,
Ayo.
but I'm Houston, born and raised.
Okay.
So I went to DBU and I was transferring. I went to a community college, save some money. But I went to DBU and they were giving me the tour, and I didn't even really know who was giving me the tour. And we were kind of landing the plane for the visit, and he goes, I feel like we hit it off. Is there anything else that I can do for you? And I was like, yes, when I start attending this school, I could use a job.
Nice.
And he goes, you're talking to the right person. I'm over hiring for undergrad admissions.
Oh, my
Would you
word.
like to be on my team? And I was like, I sure would. And so for a semester and a half, I worked in undergrad admissions just because I was
Right place at the right time.
very honest and said, I could use a job once I move up here. And I had so many roommates that would love to have on-campus jobs, and then I would even like get them interviews, and they would show up with like holy jeans and like weren't prepared, and they wouldn't get the jobs. And I just happened to have a little banter with the guy at undergrad admissions, and
you got in there.
the rest is history.
Love that for you.
Yeah.
I love that for you.
So good stuff.
Tell me a little bit too about what you do for Vanderbloemen and kind of your role, because I know that you talk to a lot of people that are interviewing for certain jobs, and you are a part of calls that have various job descriptions. And so I kind of want us to chat about what that looks like, mistakes you've seen, how the first 15 minutes is super impactful, answers to kind of steer clear from, things like that.
So I'm an executive search consultant, and that means I actually get to fly, go to our clients, oftentimes churches, sometimes nonprofits, sometimes schools, and it's really just learning what the needs are. It's more than just bullet points of a job description. It's what's the DNA of that community.
Right.
What's the DNA of who they were isn't necessarily where the Lord's leading them to go. And so that's really important to kind of get a finger on the pulse for that organization, so that we can best use that lens as we're assessing candidates. And so really just value that portion of time interacting with, for me, it's oftentimes churches, and just getting to know the history. And from there, I get to do a lot of interviews, so many interviews. And I really think first impressions makes a huge impact. I remember several years ago, because again, I'm kind of like the grandpa on the pod here, but it used to be, if a website doesn't load in 10 seconds, for real, like it used to be like, it was like 5 or 10 seconds, people would leave it. Now it's like
2,
like a 0.2 seconds. It's like, oh, this is broken, I'm not going back to it. The same is true with like first impressions at a church. If someone's coming in, and we've done that a little bit. We moved over the last few years, and we're looking for a new church. And if you don't know where to park, if you don't know where the main entrance is, if you don't know where the worship center is, like, it kind of leaves a bad taste in your mouth. And so churches have really ramped up that first impressions ministry. So first impressions on your resume, what do you want to highlight about yourself? First impressions in an interview. If it's a Zoom, first impressions is how you place yourself. What's in the background? How's the lighting? Are you on your phone in your car? Right? That tells me something. You didn't plan it through, or sometimes there's great examples of, I wanted to do this interview, but I can't do it in my church's office, and so I'm having to do this. There are examples and that totally work. But just thinking of like the first impressions of the interview is really vital, and thinking of like nonverbal communication. What are you communicating about yourself, and how you are prepping for the interview? And there's, I would say my interviews typically start more of a get to know you, hearing your heart for ministry, why this position, why this stirring, connections to the area, really just probably 10-15 minutes spent in that space. And sometimes I know within 3 minutes that this is not the right person for that position. But one of the unique things that we get to do as consultants and what we do at Vanderbloemen is just because you don't fit there doesn't mean there's not a great church and another opportunity or a great organization that could be a good fit. And so we want to value that time, be diligent, take notes, but also I think we have a responsibility to tell people no. No one likes being like the whole like the stringing along, or like I just want to know. I would much rather tell someone no so that they can find their next yes. That's always my goal. I don't want to go, well, maybe, like it, we know if we have to talk ourselves in to someone being a fit, they're probably not the right fit. And so we feel the obligation to communicate that with people, and just free them up so they can find their yes. And so there's a weight to it. Each search is a little bit different, you know, and we work with different denominations, different sized churches, different parts of the country, sometimes outside of the country. And so going, hey, if you like puzzles, you know, this is a great job for you, because the puzzle always looks a little bit different, and it's really awesome to the ups and downs to see how the Lord uses that. And William talks a lot about kind of the lamp into our feet. You know, it's like it's not 30 yards out. You know, it's not a beam where you can go, oh, here's how I get to here. But it's a faithful next step. And so we're just helping churches. We're helping these candidates take these faithful next steps. And I say, well, is this going to turn into the job? And are you hiring on? Are you signing on the dotted line? Maybe not. But let's take that faithful next step with one another, because we do see some alignment, or this isn't the right fit. Let's stay connected, though.
Yeah, you know, you kind of touched on the authenticity of it. So it's really important to be authentic in an interview. And I think that there's hard ways to learn that sometimes. But I know that for me, growing up in a Christian household, it was kind of like a, you know, not that you had to be good at everything at all, but just I want to serve people. And so I think sometimes when I go into an interview and they're like, well, are you good at this? Or can you do this? I want to be a chameleon and be like, I could learn. Yeah, no, I can do it. But it's really important, because now I'm realizing, being in different jobs, I had several different careers in Abilene, and now I've been doing this for 6 months. But it's really, really important to be honest with yourself and the person that you're interviewing, because like you said, we want to be honest with them. You know, this may not be the right fit for you. It's not a personal thing. I'm just telling you, because this is where you're spending your time. You know, this is your life. This is a lot of time that you're going to be spending. And so not just liking your coworkers or the office building you're in, but loving what you do and feeling like the skills that the Lord's given you has genuinely equipped you to walk into this. You can learn a ton along the way, but you know, a square peg in a round hole is not going to work. You don't want to take a job that's nothing to do with your skill set, and you end up being miserable, and then the hiring people are also miserable. And so that's a huge part of, I think, what we get to talk about on this podcast as well, is, you know, how do we find that balance of that honesty, being that chameleon, being able to do things, as well as staying true to the things that we feel like we're equipped to do well.
Yeah. You talked about an interview pitfall, the holy genes, right? But if you were to do something different, if you were to tell 20-year-old you, like, hey, don't do this or do this, what's kind of the secret sauce you've learned along the way that you'd like to tell yourself?
That I'd like to tell myself. The secret sauce. That's a great question. I think the honesty is huge, being honest with myself. And I think for me personally, the biggest thing was getting out of my head of doing something that I went to school for. I think we spend so much time getting educated, finding that one thing. You know, when you're young, when kindergarten, what do you want to be when you grow up? Like we're asked that question from such a young age, and sometimes you get it in your head. Obviously, I did not become a ballerina, did not go to space like some of the other things I wrote in my kindergarten journals.
Not yet.
Not yet. But I think that would be the biggest thing, is I had almost an identity crisis in the midst of it, of, you know, I thought I wanted to do this. I've learned all these skills to do this. Can I step into this? Is this something that I can do? Is this something that I want to do? And so breaking myself out of my own mold was huge for me. Open hands, kind of asking the Lord, like, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to step in this? Are you going to be able to, I mean, he is going to be able to equip me as I step into it. Or do you want my yes somewhere else? So breaking the mold of that I put myself in. I know I put myself in a box. And so that's probably the biggest piece of advice.
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, I'll share mine another time. How about that? I think we're running out of time.
We are running out of time.
Good. You want to help us land the plane, Sarah?
Yes, I do. Well, thank you so much for listening to A Higher Purpose podcast. Again, if you want to find any of our episodes, you can go to vanderbloemen.com/podcasts. You can also find us on a ton of social media platforms. We're on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, as well as LinkedIn. If you are on YouTube, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And if you are not, you can find us on Apple Music or Spotify or wherever else you listen to your podcast. Thank you so much. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time.